live.
I'll give you one for truth. There's like a lot of somethings.
Alright, so I can't really see.
Make me feel bad.
Alright, so do you guys have a clicker at all for slides?
No, you kind of just have to use the keyboard.
Alright, sounds good. How wide is the lens on that? Is that a picture? This one?
You
Okay.
to
Probably move it another way a little bit, or just move it back.
And then it gets all the slides for.
No, we got slides here.
Oh, okay, so they're just on.
Yeah.
All right. I'll handle slides and walk back and forth to start with at least. All right. So, are you guys just waiting to click live? I guess?
No,
We are
we're
live.
live.
We are live. So we'll see how many viewers are watching this. But hi, we're Team OTTO. We're here to, or Team 1746. We're here to present on strategic decision making in FRC. Let's see. For an introduction, I'm Kellen Hill. I'm the lead mentor for Team 1746. I've been doing FRC for going on 14 or 15 years now, with mostly a strategy emphasis. But introduce our other members presenting.
I'm Christian. This is my senior year on the team. I've been doing it for all 4 years.
I'm Cooper, strategy lead. I'm also a senior.
And then Michael, I'm the engineering lead for the team.
All right, so for a basic overview of what we're presenting on, so what is strategic decision making? It's generally the idea that the decisions you're making are in pursuit of a specific goal. So instead of working on projects rather aimlessly or without a specific purpose, you first identify a goal and make sure you as a team are then working effectively and efficiently in pursuit of that goal. So this presentation is largely about identifying goals, identifying the resources and abilities, and making the best decisions possible in order to reach those goals. So why is this important? The best teams in FRC wind up being the ones that know how to use the resources most intelligently. So what I absolutely love about this program is you'll find teams, you get the whole spectrum. You get teams working out of NASA shops, but you also then have teams working out of mentors' garages with nothing more than a chop saw and a drill press. But occasionally you'll run into those teams working out of those garages with little or very few resources that know how to use them intelligently enough to compete head to head with those teams working out of with infinite resources. So those are the teams, and obviously the teams working with those infinite resources know how to use them, but there's a very significant correlation between knowing how to use your resources and being an effective FRC team. So you'll see a lot of those top FRC teams are the ones that know how to use the resources. All right, so to get started, we'll be covering how our presentation is structured. We'll be walking through what goals or what you can be looking for in the preseason. We'll move then on to the build season and eventually then the competition season. So to get us started, we have Cooper, one of our strategy leads, to walk us through the preseason.
Preseason is a great time to set up everything you need to be successful for the build season, competition season. So the first thing you're going to want to do in the preseason is find out all the resources that you have available. For example, your mentors. If you have a business mentor, then you can use him and his knowledge to teach your new members how to get sponsorships and other resources for money. Your time, depending on whether you have 6 months, like just after the season ends, or right now where you have about 2 months left. It can be the difference between making a whole new robot for practice like we did in IRI for 2016, or just doing a mock kickoff to get your newer members ready for the build season. You're also going to want to keep track of all the materials you have. For For example, we just got new computers in our engineering lab, so we have more CAD programs are more available to us. For design, you want to know which resource you have. For example, some teams build it with wood, some teams have metal. Knowing how much and what you use can help you better understand which tools to build with. One example of us this year, we have a lot of tools in our shop that we haven't been using. So we contacted a mentor from Team 3476, and she's provided us with some instructions to use those, and we've been training our team members on those.
Gotcha. Something else to add in there, in order to do that resource mapping effectively, it's good to get the team to sit down in one area and actually list out all the different resources that you have, be it, do we have mechanical mentors, do we have business mentors, and that, writing it down, putting it on paper allows you to visibly recognize where the gaps are at, so you can identify those needs to then fix them going forward. But
So once you know all the resources you have, you can set up a schedule for the off season and the build season. So in the off season, one thing we realized, two of our drive team members were graduating, so we've been having like practices and tryouts for our off season competitions and our competition season to replace them. As I said earlier, we had our new CAD computers. Our newer members have been doing tutorials so they can be prepared for the build season. During the season, mapping your resources, if you have a location for a practice field and you want to maybe emphasize more, you want to plan for more time to practice so that you can have a better robot and smoother driving. There are many free resources available for FRC teams. Chief Delphi is a good website to go to learn about what other teams are doing. They publish their designs. There are many white papers on things such as scouting, setting up basic scouting systems, setting up sponsorships, getting a layout for your chairman's presentation if that's a goal you want to hit. Teams also have websites for those resources, like Team 254. They have many tutorials or resources for like CAD or other things if you want to pursue them. Local teams can also be utilized. For example, we use some tools during the build season from other teams so that our robot can be better. So just knowing where and how you can get your resources for the build season can help you be more successful. The Kit of Parts also has many softwares and other things that can improve your team. And it's not limited to just the robot. The business team can benefit from it, the scouting team. And also Kennesaw State has a water jet that you can utilize if that's in your area. The previous season is a good way to improve also. So hopefully you can analyze the goals that you set for last season, whether you hit them or didn't reach them. But why you didn't hit them is a good thing to know. If you did reach your goal, you want to mimic the habit you had last year. For example, we had a lot more sub-team communication between our electrical team and our mechanical team, so those things came along sooner. So we're probably going to try and do that again this year. We also teams if you plan during the preseason for times in the build season to iterate and refine your robot, you can be more successful. And that's just about knowing what time you have to do that. For example, example, we had enough time in between our last competition and the state championship to build a whole new top of the robot, which helped us in the world competition for our turret. You also want to prevent what went wrong, whether it's strategy or design, or just not having the resources. You want to, so bad strategy, for example, you want to, we in 2016, even though we had two of the best logo robots in the state, we got outshot because they were shooting high goals, which were worth more. And so we could have potentially won that competition had we went with a high goal robot instead of a low goal. And also, you want to make sure that you're designing to the capability of your team. A lot of bad design choices stem from not knowing your team's resources or building out too far out of your team's resources. So not overextending, but also reaching your full potential allows you to build to the best robot. So finally, during the preseason, you want to establish your goals. For example, in 2016, we set out the goal of just winning our first event. Last year, we set out the goal of being the first pick and at Worlds. Those goals allowed us to decide how we were going to build our robot. You also, some goals that you can set are just being in alliance captain in each event, or getting enough district points to go to the Worlds, or just being picked in every competition. The goals kind of depend on how many resources you have, and again, how much time you have. So just knowing your goals will allow you to build a robot to reach those goals rather than trying to build the best robot in the world.
And that's where, so Cooper's mentioned then a couple of common elements you'll see throughout the rest of the presentation, which is that reflection is a huge part of the process for what went right, what went wrong, how do we keep the good habits, and how do we correct the bad habits or the things that we want to improve on. So that's something, a common occurrence you'll see through the rest of the presentation. So now we'll work into the build season with Christian, and he'll walk you through how to make some of the right choices.
All right, so during the build season, the first thing you're gonna do is day one, the game is gonna come out. As soon as this happens, what you really wanna do is you wanna have all of your team members go through and read whichever parts of the manual, but eventually read throughout the entire manual. So while you're reading the manual, some of the important points you wanna look for are how the points are scored in the game, and how do you get ranking points. So for points in the game, one of the most important things is being very consistent. So let's say you can hit that high goal 1 out of every 5 times. Well, if that's only worth 5 points, you're wasting all of your time on 5 points. Whereas you could get the low goal 5 out of 5 times, and that's worth 2 points, and you would get twice as many points just being consistent as opposed to trying to go for the wrong thing. What you're gonna do is use the team goals that you identified in the preseason. And using these team goals, you can kind of pick out the robot and the role you want to play with your robot. So if you want to seed number 1 and pick the other better robot, if that's how you want to play it, you kind of want to pick out the robot to best complete these goals. So another thing you're going to do is prototyping. And what this does is this allows you to, first couple weeks, what you're going to be doing is brainstorming tons and tons of ideas, going through and picking out the best of those ideas. Once you pick out an idea you think could work, the best thing to do would be to create almost a mock-up design. So the picture you can see on the board is something that we created early on, and this was just wood, metal, even cardboard in there. And this kind of showed us that for gears, all we really have to do is kind of this one simple thing, and that we don't have to overcomplicate it. And with the shooter, even with just a basic shooter we made in like a day or two, we could get pretty accurate shots, so we knew that was gonna be something that we wanted to go for. But let's say you're a team and you do create this, but you can't quite figure out how to get high goals, and no matter what you try, it just doesn't work. This might be something you want to put off for later or not go for at all. That way you can focus on just the gear part and pretty much get that down. Again, getting that consistent before you go for the other thing that you're less consistent.
Yeah, so regarding that allocation of resources, making sure you're using your time, your people, and your manufacturing or materials efficiently. Yeah, like Christian said, if you need to drop something, or if something's viewed as too difficult, make sure you identify that and reset your goals appropriately.
So general choices during the build season. Obviously, your main goal is using the resources you have identified as efficiently as possible. So one tool you can use is a Gantt chart, and this allows you to look at goals over time and who's running each goals. So this is just an example, but what you could do instead is have maybe one color for your programming team, one color for your mechanical team, and one color for your electronics team. And setting out goals and time for each of the sections allows you to make sure that you're not wasting time with, say, a drivetrain if you don't have an electronics panel to go with it. So this kind of allows you to have all of those major things, so an electronics panel, the programming for the robot, and the drive chassis all ready around the same time, so you can get started right away and you're not wasting any time. So another thing you're gonna do is identify the major tasks in order to complete the robot in the 6 weeks. So what you're gonna do is you're going to ask yourself who's leading the task, when is the deadline, and identifying any major issues with this task. And what this allows you to do is it gives you someone to delegate resources to it, gives someone to keep you on task and on track, and identifying any major issues before you get started stops you from kind of getting stuck in a place where you can't come back from. So again, reflection, very important throughout all parts of the build season. So during the build season, what you're going to want to do is plan goals and set deadlines for these goals. And as these deadlines come, you can identify whether you're ahead, on time, or behind. And based on how far you are along, you can make changes. So let's say I'm really far ahead, then I can say, hey, maybe I can use this time to go towards something else, so I'm not wasting any time. If you're on time, you want to make sure you're staying on top of it and keep doing what you're doing. If you're behind, you might want to identify what can I do to get back on track, and if I am too far behind, is this something that really has to get done, or is this just a want? After the build season, but before competition, this is where you're identifying where your robot is at. So you're gonna have your bot bagged after the 6 weeks, but what you can do, and what we do, is we have a practice robot. So with our practice robot, even though our main robot is in a bag and we can't touch it, with this practice robot, we can use, our programming team can continue to use it to perfect our autonomous as much as we can. We can also continue to train our drivers on the game before our first competition comes up. And in general, you're just going to want to continue to improve. Even though your competition robot's in a bag, continuing to improve because time is money. Lastly, documentation. So the picture over here is one of our kind of sessions. So this is from after our season, and after our season, we just wrote down what went right and what went wrong after overall in the whole season overall, after championships, and what we can do for next year. And we just listed out every single thing we could think of. So everything is on there from, well, we didn't bring this, or we didn't have this, so we have to look in what we can identify as maybe we should make a list next time, before, like even a week before the competition, make sure we have a list of batteries, battery beak, battery chargers, anything super important, and everything we need, just so we can go the day before and do a checklist, make sure we have everything.
So now we're moving on to the competition season. Alright, so at the start of the competition season, you have to review your team goals first off, and this just makes sure you're staying focused and knowing what needs to happen. So just remind yourself your goal, like, is it to win an event, get a specific award, and just staying on track is one of the most important things there. Second thing is understanding the game. That's a very big part of the competition season, because that's how you win, how you earn points. And knowing that you understand the whole manual, and the main point is you're not giving up any free points or getting penalties that could be easily avoided. Just making sure that happens. Okay, so next main topic is strategic driving. How do I drive and approach matches in the most intelligent way to get the best results? And the main focus here is having a plan. So going to a match with that plan is what, just staying focused, basically. So the first thing you do to establish your plan is understand your win condition for that match. So let's say I'm playing against the Cheesy Poofs last year. They had an insanely good field robot. So most likely I'm not going to be able to outshoot them in fuel. So I'm going to adjust my plan accordingly, and I'm going to try something like play heavy defense on them, just trying to shut them down and deny them points. The next thing you want to do to develop your plan is, in your off time, an important thing to do is analyze gameplay. So the game strategy tends to shift as the season goes on. People find more efficient ways to do things. So the best way to do that is review matchups, see what wins events, and how can I do that with my robot, and go in from there. Another main point of having a plan is in person. When you're talking, you're in the queue line, you're talking to your alliance members. The main thing there is communication. So knowing what each of your robots can do, setting an appropriate plan, and how do I get to my win condition against other alliance with these robots, and just figuring those important points. Another main thing is playing your role. So often teams tend to play with the robot they intended to have instead of the robot they actually have. And just knowing that it's more important to be consistent instead of being consistent and specializing in something, rather than being a jack of all trades and not and performing all those tasks poorly. Okay, so in the match, you're going to have to make decisions because the game is constantly changing. You don't always know what your opponents are going to be doing. And so there are 4 main points to keep in mind. The first one is consistency. So the whole point here is minimizing risks. High seeds often look for the consistent robots that consistently perform well and consistently score their points. The way you do this is going for the the easiest way to do this is going for the low-hanging fruit. So what that means is going for the easy points in a game. Such like last year, climbing was a big part of the game, and it wasn't too hard to do, but it also gave you 50 points from it. So often, a lot of teams that could climb were often going to be in eliminations, even though it's only like a small part of the game. It's worth the time. Another key factor in decision making is understanding that the thing that wins matches is point differential instead of setting the new high score for the event. So this means even if you only scored 80 points in a match, if your opponent scored 79 points, you're still winning the match and approaching each decision with that in mind. So sometimes it's easier to defend points rather than trying to score points. Another factor is drive coach responsibilities. So the drive coach also plays a key part in decision making because they're basically another set of eyes for the driver. They should be looking ahead. The driver is only responsible for looking forward a few seconds in time to see what path I need to take or where can I grab this game piece. And while that's happening, the drive coach should be looking at what's the next move that needs to be made and communicating with your alliance members what that move should be and how you approach your win condition. And the last point is adapting to change. So things will go wrong in a match. That's just how it works. And the most important thing here is just staying calm, adapting quickly, and making sure you're communicating what's going on with your alliance members. So we have driving tips. These are just things to more effectively make choices with. Playing to your robot's capabilities, that's a big part of it. So again, it goes to that concept that you should be playing with the robot that you have and not the robot you want it to have. And having a play style that suits that robot. So if your robot was damaged last match, you got hit pretty hard, now your bumpers are hanging off, or they're very loosely attached, you don't want to be playing aggressively. But at the same time, if you know your robot is very robust and it can take impacts, you don't want to be playing in the back, you want to be playing to your full potential. Playing around your opponents is also a big factor, so that using information you can get from scouting of the robots, you want to be taking advantage of that. So let's say my opponents have a mechanism drivetrain and I have traction wheels. That means I have the ability to push them around and control where they go. So that means, let's say I grab the gear and I need to, on my way back there's a robot on the way, I might as well just take them with me because I can push them all around the field. And that also another thing you can scout is their cycle paths or strategy, their general strategy, just knowing that and being able to disrupt that to gain that point differential, something you need to keep in mind. Last thing is using everything to your advantage. So last year, the airship took up a significant portion of the driver's field of view. So let's say you're getting defended in the middle of the field and someone's blocking your path and moving back and forth side to side. People aren't always aware that sometimes the opponents can't see what you're doing, and just, once you cross into a blind spot or something, you can make a move that usually wouldn't be able to be made to gain an advantage and continue with your plan. So this is scouting and what needs to go on with that to win. So first thing here is gathering important data. So you need to know what data points I need to get and how do I use this data in alliance selections, basically. Knowing what you need to look for and how it affects your robot, your team, your strategy is an important part of just scouting. As far as line selection goes, there are many factors that go into play on how I'm going to form my alliance. So one main point is I need to meet my goals. what robots do I need to pick to meet my goals? Do I just want to win an event, or do I want to win the event, or do I just want to make it to quarterfinals or something? So picking the appropriate robots for that. Another thing to keep in mind is what strategy do I want to play out there? So let's say I'm a low seed, and all the top seeds have all the high scoring robots. What I'm going to do there is I'm not going to pick an alliance that necessarily is going to try and outscore them, because most likely I'm not going to be able to outscore them. So I'm going to try and play heavy defense on them to minimize the point differential between us. And yeah, that also plays into your picking strategies, which is as a lower seed, you're most likely not going to get consistent picks or consistent robots, but to still have a chance of winning, you're going to have to play for an upset, which means, let's say there's this one robot that one match they scored 10 gears or something, but the next match they only scored 1. Picking that robot is still a good choice. It's a lower seed because they have the potential to go crazy and go for that upset. And it's also a thing where, as a lower seed, you also might want to deny picks from a top robot. So you know this specific robot complements a high seed very well, so that it's most likely on their pick list. You just pick it just to deny them the perfect alliance. And so the last thing we want to do, of course, is reflection. So before we went over the whole whiteboard where our team went over what went wrong and what was right during that season, the important thing here is during the season, you constantly want to be asking yourself important questions like, are we on track? Is our goal still in mind? And are we taking the steps that we need to meet that goal? Let's see, how can we improve at the end of the season, or even after an event? Asking yourself how we can improve is very important. So one thing we do is that at the end of the season, at the end of every event, we look through what robots performed well that week, what they were doing, and can we take what they're doing and apply it to our robot or our team to have a better chance of winning. So that's stuff like pulling a mechanism off of a robot that does that very well. So in 2016, we didn't have a climber the first few events, but we looked at what the other teams were doing that year and how quickly they scaled and making a mechanism based off those other teams and then applying that to our robot. The other thing there is just in between competitions, you want to be making sure you're using your time effectively. So in Georgia, you get that couple hours or whatever for unbagged time before an event, and just making sure you fully use that time and not unbagging until you know what needs to happen and having your priorities set instead of just unbagging and then asking what to do. Another thing you can do is just review matches. So I'm sure all teams have, after a loss, you can go through what could we have done better, basically, and making sure that you don't make the same mistake over and over. That's pretty much it.
Yeah, it's like watching match video for us at Columbus and losing in finals by 3 points because Team 6340 was intelligent enough to know that dropping 10 balls in a low goal during Auton was going to be those few extra points to make the difference. So that's something we didn't want to have happen again. So that kind of fueled our efforts to pursue shooting more accurately into the high goal. So yeah, making sure you review what happened and make sure it doesn't happen again. So I guess as kind of a summary, I hope we've given you some tips on how to make these decisions. That it's all about identifying what your team's goals are, and while it's very tempting to say, oh, there's the best teams in the world, I want to be exactly like them next year, a lot of the times that's a goal that has to be set 5 years out, because a lot of those resources take a lot of time to develop. So you want to make sure you're taking into account your team's current position and saying, how can we build upon where we're currently at in pursuit of being one of those top teams in the world, or just an organization that uses our resources more efficiently. So I hope we've provided you with some input or some ideas on how to improve your situation. If you have any questions or ideas, I guess, feel free to reach out to us on our team website, social media. We'd be happy to answer any questions you might have. But otherwise, this has been strategic decision making, and thank you very much.
All right.
Thank you guys.
Yeah.
That was really good. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yeah.